It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Thursday, March 6th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content. Just thinking the Flyers have to maybe change some things against the Jets this time around.
I think so.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. To keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials. And of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, it is Thursday, so we are going to have a draft prospect profile to talk about in a team for a player from Czechia
Yeah.
that we are excited to talk about and get into the latest on the trade deadline. But thinking about tonight's game against Winnipeg, obviously the second game against the same team in a week, which makes it an interesting kind of challenge here. And just trying to discern any thoughts that John Tortorella had about this game from his post-game notes after the loss to Calgary. And I think, he didn't really make any excuses for the loss more than an explanation in terms of the second day after travel sort of thing. But he ultimately said, yeah, we didn't play well as a team. This was a team loss here. And yes, Sam Ersson had a rough time, but this was definitely a team loss. And I would kind of agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, look, the schedule is only going to get more compressed from here. So if he's going to say that, he's going to be saying it a lot. And look, he definitely could have
Well,
used
not over the next little bit because they got a 7-game homestand.
true after that. Yes, that's true. But he certainly could have used Fedotov and net coming off a hot game. They didn't do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, it just, but the net wasn't the only issue. It wasn't like that derailed the whole
Oh,
game because, like you
no.
said,
And he
Fedotov
said that.
definitely, it stabilized it. So, yeah, there were other things at play.
Yeah, he said that Fedotov played well. That fourth goal, though, was a big deal, because it was right after the Flyers got within one, and then it
Hmm.
just went off the rails again. But that it really was a team loss overall, and that they really have to get back to their structure and their defense to offense style for tonight's game, and that's what was successful the
Hmm.
first time around against Winnipeg, right?
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, that was successful. I do think they play really well in Winnipeg. I think now uh, it could be a different game too. I think just you're reshuffling things, so it's definitely you can't use the same strategy. That's the point.
Right, so soon against the same team.
Correct.
It's just not gonna work because Winnipeg did not enjoy that loss at all, and I'm
No.
sure will come with a lot more aggression, I think. I
Yeah.
think their forecheck is gonna be a lot stronger in this game in particular, and so the Flyers are gonna have to figure out how to get the puck out of their own zone much more efficiently in this one.
Yeah, I think that's a key, and I think just losing to the Islanders, they're going to be mad. So
Mhm.
that's another thing. Their whole management team, was at the game the other night. Or like not their whole management team, but a lot of it. And so with all that focus, this team's going to come out with their hair on fire. Much like Calgary, who didn't score in a few games, like they're going to have
Right.
something a little more to prove, I think.
Yeah, I think so, and yeah, that loss to the Islanders was, I think, embarrassing for them
Right. Yeah.
in a lot of ways because 'cause they're better than that, and they've struggled a little bit recently against Metro teams,
Yes.
which is very unusual, I think, for Winnipeg.
It is. Usually my memory of Winnipeg coming in the last 2 or 3 times into Philly is they come out with a win. But,
Yeah.
so now I think they're going to, try and harken back to that for a lack of a better term.
Yeah, so I think it will be a challenging game for the Flyers, and one of the challenges that John Tortorella talked about post-game that we talked about in our recap on yesterday's show was Travis Konecny and his game and his struggle right now to get quality chances and to get on the board. They did move him around in the lineup a little bit uh, over the course of that game, and it was interesting because they started him out with Lawton and Kuzmenko where he had been, and
Right.
then kind of moved him to be with Paling and Tippett for a little bit of the game. And he was with Paling and Peltier for a little bit of the game. Like none of it worked. And
No.
I think like the interesting thing is the one combo that they didn't try there is moving Kuzmenko to the line with Mitchkov, like we've been talking about, and then putting Tippett with Lawton and Konecny as as the line to try and get Konecny
Right.
go. Like that is the missing link here, I think, in what they've tried so far.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I don't think it matters what line he's on. I think they should just keep him on the same line. I don't think that matters. I think it's in his head, and we've seen him do this, and he'll come out of it. Like that's just going to happen.
Yeah, I do think so to a large degree. I just secretly want to get the Kuzmenko
Oh, me too.
Mitchkov
But
combo
I'm
together,
I'm done
and this is
talking
a
about
way
it.
to do it.
Other than the power play, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so John Tortorella hinted that he might change things up a little bit. So we'll see if we see something different because we haven't seen something different in a while. Like the
Sure.
only change we've seen is, because of the Hathaway injury and, having Delorier slot in. But other than that, it's been pretty static for, since the break, I think.
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, I'm surprised Deloria has been in, but John just doesn't seems defiant in calling up any forward, which certainly you can call up A-balls. It's not like he's only a center. He could play
I know.
wing too, and he's better than Delorier, but who's to say, so it's like so weird in that regard. And then, we could talk about usage of other players that could be different too.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. So, I would be curious to see what he does differently in tonight's game there. Um, do you put Sam Ersson in net?
Uh no, I would use Fedotov because again, he stabilized that game. Why am I going back to Urson?
Yeah, I think I'm of two minds here because I
Hmm.
think that you want to get Sam Ersson back on the horse, so to speak. And so playing him right away is a way to do that. We also saw Fedotov play in that last game against Winnipeg, and maybe you want to show something
He
different
might
to
have
Winnipeg.
frustrated him. Well, I
Yeah,
don't know.
this
I mean,
time
yeah,
around. So, but right, but then there is that flip side where
right.
he played well against them. So I can see absolutely valid arguments for both choices
Oh, me
here.
too.
I think he's going to go with Urson because
He
of the
is.
back on the horse
Yeah,
situation.
that's what he'll do.
But yeah, it's just an interesting choice there that they could possibly make. But as far as any other changes, like what do you think the Flyers could do?
Well, I mean, they could put Jacob Pelletier on the third line. They could have Lawton be the 4C. It's not like they have to have Peltier's never played the fourth line in his life. Like I talked to people who watched him all of his whole career in Moncton. I watched him a little there. I watched him in the AHL. He's never played the fourth line, and now his minutes are down. It was 10 minutes last game. Last time against Winnipeg, it was like 6:48. He's sometimes not even getting a shot on net a game. He's a minus most games. Why? Because he's never played this role. And if this is going to be the extent of how they use him, they're doing it wrong. They're not going to see the best out of him.
Right. I think he's a guy that needs to play more minutes to get his
Yes.
groove going,
Yes.
right?
No
And
question.
and be effective. And so I think in the desire to get Konechny going, maybe we could get Peltier into a better position
Yeah,
here.
that's a good idea too. Yeah. I think both things could go hand in hand.
Yeah, and I'm not sure Ryan Paling is the right center here. That's why I kind of like the Lawton
Right.
idea here. If you put Peltier on a line with Lawton and
Yeah.
Konechny, that could work really well.
Yeah.
Just try that
You
out
got to
and
you got to let him show his stuff. He can't show his stuff this way.
yeah, I think so. And we also haven't seen any changes really on the blue line.
No,
One
none.
would think one would think they could, but they have not. And so that is an interesting aspect of all of this
Well,
as
I
well.
mean, we could say this. We haven't heard a call up, so they're not going to change personnel, but they easily could change personnel. We know what change that could be. They're not doing it. There could be even 2 changes on the blue line if they wanted to, but they're not doing it. So it would be just about shuffling the deck chairs.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens in morning skate, or if there's
Mhm.
a desire to hold anybody out the lineup for trade purposes, being only a
Right.
day removed from the deadline, that could affect things as well.
And here's an
And
existential question I'll throw out there to everybody, you included. Do you think they'll use Risto a lot less on the power play if he doesn't get traded? I personally think they will.
well,
This is
yes,
all
that is
showcasing.
that is 100% true. But given all that, we'll probably get some clues as to the trade deadline if they hold either Risto or Lawton
Right.
out of the lineup. And, obviously we're recording this the day before, so we don't know right now, but we'll
No.
get some hints today. That
I mean,
is for
Lawton could be
sure.
setting up a new photo shoot. We
And
don't know.
and we'll talk about the trade deadline and a trade proposal and all sorts of swirl around it coming up next.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you could even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app's easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. I would take the Lakers over the Knicks. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA.
On tomorrow's show, we will recap that game against the Jets. It's our trade deadline day, so we will do our best to keep up with the latest and greatest on all of that. And then we look ahead to our first post trade deadline shows against the Seattle Kraken and New Jersey Devils. We have that back to back coming up this weekend as well. We are going to do a trade deadline recap special episode on Friday, should the Flyers make any moves. So keep an eye out in your feeds for all of that as well. Now, something that's hanging over the trade deadline, as well as the upcoming offseason and free agency and everything around contracts in the NHL, is unfortunately these tariffs that have been put in place between the United States and Canada right
Mhm.
now. And it has had an effect on the Canadian dollar to the point where there's an impact here. And Russ, you saw Gary Bettman on CNBC talking about this. So, how does all that affect the NHL and potential contracts here?
Yeah, I saw it on Jimmy Murphy's feed, so I read the CNBC article. I'm not a
Hmm.
CNBC viewer, just to let people know. But uh, yeah, it was interesting because like approximately 25% of the league revenues comes from Canada. And we all know players get paid in US funds. So if by these tariffs the Canadian dollar drops more, it costs more for the Canadian teams to pay in US funds to pay their players. And
Right.
my first thought was,
Well, and to
uh-oh.
operate in
And
general.
to operate. Yeah, absolutely. And so, my thought was, uh-oh, I wonder if some of these Canadian teams stop spending to the cap and make up the difference there. Say, all right, let's just spend to 90% of the cap or 85 to make up for this. And, I can't say they won't.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting because, it's a very delicate situation.
It
We
is.
don't know how long this is going to last for, but given this league that operates with a significant percentage of its business in Canada,
Yep.
which is unlike the other sports
No
leagues
sport has
in
this going like this. Baseball
no.
has one team.
Baseball has one team, basketball has one team,
Right.
or the NBA, I should say, because
Yes.
there's women's basketball. They also
Yes.
have a team in
Yes.
Toronto now too. But, you know, Major League Soccer, I think, is the other entity that has multiple teams in Canada, and it's uh, it's a different animal for the NHL, and it will have an impact. So I think it is something that's important to monitor and see how this could be impacting teams. Will it impact a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs, which seems like a bottomless pit of money? Maybe not. Could it affect other teams? Possibly.
Yeah, it definitely could affect Calgary, who's expecting a new building. I mean, that
Right.
could slow all that down. I would say this: Gary Bettman's pretty smart in these kinds of situations, and I saw another quote where he said he hadn't spoken to the Trump organization yet, but he believes it's a policy issue. So, and people are kind of getting caught in the middle. I think he went on CNBC because he doesn't normally go on CNBC, and this is his hope is probably that a staffer gets a hold of this and says something to the higher ups, and it gets eventually to the president. I think that's what the end game of this appearance was.
Yeah, could be. Could be. Would not put anything past him on
No,
that front. In the meantime, as of recording, there's not a ton going on trade wise here. We had one deal go down, sending Vitek Vanacek to the Florida Panthers, and Patrick Giles went back to the Sharks. He's like a AHLer call up option
yeah,
right now. So Phantoms won't see him in Charlotte this weekend, I guess,
no,
is the only impact there. But it's a replacement goaltender for Spencer Knight, who
right.
they traded to Chicago here. And I think it's a really interesting switcheroo for Florida in the goaltending depth department, trying to repeat here. Is Vanacek like the right guy to be that backup? I don't know.
I mean, he's right in the regular season. He could win you a few games in the playoffs. I think it's kind of
Yeah.
dicey, man. If you had to use him, they might be going with the theory that if Bob's out, we're done anyhow.
Yeah, that is true. That is absolutely true. Matthew Olivier got an extension in Columbus, 6 years at 3 million each. The only thing that it makes me think Flyers wise is in terms of potential bottom sixer contract extensions and what's the market for that. And I don't know that this is a particular situation that would necessarily impact the going rate for any current Flyers.
No, this is just like compounding, like what Nick Delorier makes. Uh,
Hmm.
now, Olivier has 12 goals. Okay. Uh, this one, you want to know, you want to play Remember When? You know what this reminds me of? When Jody Shelley had that one hot year. He comes in with the
Yeah.
Rangers. He scores 2 goals. He Flyers look at this and they sign him to a deal. This smacks of that because this is a career year for him with goals. He's probably never going to get close to this again. He'll get the penalty minutes, sure, and he's a big guy, but 3 years? No way. I don't know what they're
Well,
doing.
now he's a broadcaster, so congrats, Jody.
Yes, for Jody, he has transitioned very well. This contract, not a good contract.
No, no, not at all. All right, that was a blast from the past there.
It was.
That was a good call. That was a good call. Okay, so we had suggested that if you had any trade suggestions for the deadline this year out there, that we would talk about them. We talked about one with the LA Kings on yesterday's show, and Paul posted in our YouTube channel that he would try and package a first and second round pick, maybe Kulisov and a young defenseman to try and get a number one or number two center, and most likely a two, he said, because more would have to be given to get a number one, and maybe that's too big a package for the Flyers to give up right now. And I think, it's very clear that based on the Farabee Frost trade, that Briere was clearing the deck to try and make room for either this top center, and most likely this top center, or a top defenseman, I
Right.
think secondarily here. And so we've done step one. We're waiting for step two. This is very much a step two trade proposal here, right?
Yeah. So, let's just say for argument's sake, you put Cam York as the defenseman and you put Gabe Velarde as the center with something else coming back, whether it's a pick or another prospect or something. The thought is, and I'm pretty sure Velarde's in his RFA year and he's having a great year. And so I think the issue here is they would have to pay him. And so the Flyers would get a chance to get a terrific center young center, big center, who they could set the price to. And if he signs an extension, that's great. You might be able to set that up before the trade. And that's another reason why you might make this deal. The only downside is, and the reason I say York is because he's from California, right? I mean,
Uh-huh.
it would make sense. They know him really well. All the scouts know him really well. But I think the issue here is York's offense is cratered this year, but his defense is really solid. And
Yeah.
so, that's the part where it's like, I mean, down the line, there's definitely somebody that could fill the York role, but not for the next couple of years. So I don't know how the Flyers feel about that, but they certainly would solve the center position. They could bring up Andre, and that would at least plug that, and then they could shuffle the deck there, and they definitely would be better. And then,
Yeah.
that player
Well, and
back,
he
you
has
just
the size that the
yes,
Flyers want,
correct.
right?
Yeah,
So he is an RFA, so
yes.
the next contract could be manageable,
Yep.
I
It's
think,
a lot more
for the
manageable than
Flyers.
who you're gonna get as a free agent. That's for sure.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think it's interesting because again, with the Jets like in town tonight, I think it'd be a very interesting trade to make right at this moment, right?
Yeah.
But I think that he would be a really good option. I think, and it would create some really good competition, I think, between him and Jet Luchenko for that 1C
Yeah, yeah.
spot.
I talked about California. It would be Winnipeg. Sorry. It's like I I was thinking when he was still on the Kings, but I know he's on Winnipeg. My brain just went to a weird place. But they certainly know Cam York anyhow because
Right.
Kevin Cheverdayoff gets a lot of American players on his roster like he does. So
He does. Yep. Yeah, I think, if Velarde and Luchenko are your top 2 centers, I'm
doing
pretty
pretty good.
happy with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
So,
doing pretty good.
I think this kind of a deal, and I think it would cost a first and a second to get
Probably.
him, or the first and the player, and then either a lower end prospect or another
Right.
pick, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it's definitely a
That's the
first and
framework of it.
a quality player,
Yeah.
right? So I think Paul is heading in the right direction here with the
I think
framework
so.
here. We just have to find the right guy, and Velarde is a reasonable option here, I think.
Yeah, because again, they they're how Winnipeg has to pay them. They've already had to pay a fair amount of guys. They would have to move somebody to keep them.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. All right. Well, we are going to switch gears and talk NHL draft coming up next, where we are profiling a smaller center in Adam Benak. Okay, Russ. Adam Benak is a Czech center. He is a month shy of 18 right now, so he's on the younger side.
He
So a
is.
little bit more runway here. He is 5'7", although technically they're saying that he's 5'7 and a quarter, but that's like
Whatever.
children speak in
Yes,
terms of your height.
it is.
So he's 5'7" and 164 pounds. So he's a very small kid, but a very talented kid who's a
Super
tremendous
talented.
playmaker, right?
Yeah, he's feisty. Like there's things when you watch him, it's easy to forget about his size. I mean, sure, if you see him get plastered on the ice, then you might say, okay, but he has elusiveness to him because his skating's so good. The first thing that really got me when I saw him early in the year was, okay, for a small guy, let's see what he can do. And he penalty kills, and he's just a tremendous skater. His stick and puck control is really good. He's got a terrific shot. And then you realize this guy can be a force on offense. And then it's like, okay, he's 5'7". All right, all right. So let's see. And then uh, any level I've seen him play at, he plays to the right level. And then I watch him on the penalty kill, and I'm like, wow, this guy's really a good penalty killer, like better than average already. And
Like he could
okay,
develop like a Travis Konecny style penalty killer.
yeah, and he's got the offense, he's got the speed, and the stick work is really, really, really good. Yeah, I think his overall 200-foot game needs help, but not a lot of help. And I'm just like, you know what? there's something here, and it's just going to be a matter of what team wants to draft him. I don't think he'll be in the first round, although he has first round skills. Like when you just look at his skills,
Right.
he was 2.5 inches taller, 2 inches taller, he'd be a first rounder. So now it's a matter of he probably goes in the second, and the Flyers are loaded with second round picks. And so
Yeah.
he's a guy I would take a home run swing on.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, he does play in North America now. He had
Yes.
been in a league in Czechia for a while, playing at all different levels.
Hmm.
He's been on their national U18 team for 2 years. Even as a U17 player, he was on their U18 team, which is a really good sign. U18s are in April and May in Texas this year, and that roster has not been named, but he's going to be on that roster for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. It's a guarantee.
Yeah, so I don't know when his birthday is relative to it, but I think he'll be on that roster, for U18s, but, we'll see how that works for sure. But he's playing in the USHL right now for Youngstown and really trying to transition his game to the North American style of play, to get used to the ice, to get used to the physicality, especially with his size. So he's doing everything that he needs to do in order to prepare himself to play in North America, which is super smart.
Yeah, he's more than a point a game in the USHL. That's a really good thing. He can score goals. He's more of a playmaker, like you said. The hockey IQ is high. Like he does everything right. I mean, when you watch him, you're like, you know, you're almost watching him with prejudice because, like, what you end up saying is, man, if he were 2 inches taller, but you know, he isn't. So now you have to just deal with the fact that, okay, I understand a
Right.
lot of 5'7" guys haven't made it in the league, especially centers. A guy like Nate Gerby comes to mind. He was smaller. And so it's possible. And maybe he doesn't end up as a center, but I got to tell you, he's really good on faceoffs too. Like he could play the center position, but I understand if he doesn't get, used as a center. I would understand that. But on the wing, he'd be really dangerous. So it's like, he's kind of like a third liner bust guy, but I would certainly take a chance.
Yeah, I think so. And we talked a couple weeks ago about Riker Lee, who is in the USHL,
Yes.
who's got 54 points right now. Benák is not far behind at 48 points, and he's eighth in the USHL right now. And to come over from Europe and have to adjust to a completely different culture, a different style of play, everything new around you and have this kind of success shows how malleable he is.
Yeah.
And, quotes I read about him is that he's very coachable as
Hmm.
well. And I think that really helps a guy like him in a way to have a strong development path.
Yeah. I mean, he just gets lost in the shuffle or conversation because of his size. Because, like I said, otherwise he'd be a guaranteed first rounder with everything else he has going for him. So, maybe that's enough to make him slip to the second, but, at some point he's going to get picked in the second. I'm pretty sure of that.
Right. And it seems like, he would just stay in the USHL
Yeah.
for an additional year,
Yep.
and then kind of go from there, maybe make the jump to the AHL at that
But he
point.
doesn't have to. He's got options now. He could go to the OHL, like he could go to
That's
college.
true.
He could go to college and the OHL. Like you pretty much could write your own ticket now. But I think he'd probably stay in the USHL another year.
Yeah, I think that would make sense for him as well, but a very intriguing possibility. And again, like you said, with the Flyers having an insane amount of second round draft picks right now, even if they only have 2 or 3 by the time trade deadline is
Yeah.
said and done, it's still enough picks to take a swing
Even
on
if you
a
have to
guy like
trade
this.
a couple of them to move up because you realize, okay, he's going to go here and our pick is like 4 picks away or 5 picks, whatever, just do it. He's a
Just do
player
it.
that's worth the risk.
Yeah, I mean, if a 5'7" guy is a first line center in the USHL, he's clearly gotta have the skills to back it up.
Yes. No, he does.
All right, well, we will keep track of him and add Adam to our spreadsheet, which, the link is in the show notes for all of the guys we've covered so far, leading up to the draft. We will keep adding to it as the weeks, move on. On tomorrow's show, we will recap Flyers versus Jets. We're going to talk trade deadline and preview the weekend back-to-back against the Seattle Kraken and New Jersey Devils. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions or Flyers thoughts, let us know on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. It brings you daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day.